Hello, Father Murr.
Salve, Robertus.
Wonderful to see you again. We had some people writing to us saying that they wondered if we were off the air. We haven't been canceled yet. We're back, and we're very much excited to do the program we're doing today and future ones.
Reminds me of the remark by the comeback of Mark Twain when he wrote after 2 years of his vacation in Europe, the rumors of my death are highly exaggerated. Anyway.
Okay, the rumors of our cancellation are still exaggerated.
Well, who knows tomorrow?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll try to stay on. We'll communicate with people. But Father Murr, you were in the Vatican as a kind of official in the press office, communications office in the 1970s under Paul VI. You have a memory of the 60s. You were a young man from America. Then you got to be friends with Cardinal Gagnon, who did an investigation for Paul VI of the Vatican in the 1970s. You were even driving him around the city of Rome. And then you've had a career as a parish priest, and you ran a school, and you've written some books now, and you're quite famous. You've written a book, Murder.
Am I?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, wow. All right. You think so? That's good, Robert.
Well, you have a reputation for telling the truth. You don't care where the chips fall. And you also have a reputation for having a jolly sense of humor, and you're not kind of worn down and worn out by everything you have seen and heard.
Oh, no, you mustn't be that way. Nobody should permit himself to become worn out and in any way despairing. These are great times. They are great times. They're very interesting and great times. They are.
Well,
a lot to be positive about.
Well, there's two things that have just happened that I wrote about in my most recent editorial. One is a conversation that Elon Musk had with Tucker Carlson. And Elon Musk, of course, is the owner of Twitter, the owner of Tesla, the founder and owner. And the conversation was that I'll give you the conversation had to do with creating God.
Yes, I heard a little bit of that. Yes.
And then the second thing was an Israeli philosopher, futurologist named Harari, who said that we could rewrite the scriptures with artificial intelligence and finally come up with a scripture that all humanity could agree upon because it would be written with a super intelligence.
Good luck on that one, Robert. Good luck on that.
Yeah, I wanted to critique both of those things just quickly. And I will go back now to tell you the exact details so you can comment, and with your
well, I would just begin by this with a little bit of a caution to those who say that artificial intelligence could produce, if you will, a sacred scripture that would be perfect for the world to understand and to embrace. It's already been done. It's already been done. The sacred scripture that we have is the Word of God. Now, you want to get better than the Word of God? Good luck with that one. I mean, show me that one. I'd like to see that. I'd like to, when they do that, Robert, would you send me a copy when they get that done?
Of course, I 110% agree with you.
Oh, sorry. It's almost, you know what it reminds me of, Robert? The Tower of Babylon. We're going to reach heaven. Just keep building, man. Keep building. We'll get there.
Yeah. Okay. So in two ways, with the rewriting of the scriptures or a proposal to do so with supercomputers, and the concept that we are building God as men, which I'll explain further in just a moment, we are getting to the height of folly, even though we have enormous power. And therefore, you and I think, are concerned that this folly is going to lead us into a dead end or into a ditch.
I would say this. My first reaction is it's not going to lead us anywhere but good, because anytime these movements start, wherever they start, and whenever they start in human history, they all end They all end in a minor or major disaster. That's all. It's Nietzsche who said that God is dead. We have killed him, right? Well, fine. Since Nietzsche made such a proclamation, and it wasn't Nietzsche who killed God, he was simply commenting on the death of God. You remember the 1966 Time magazine? God is dead, or is God dead? I think they had the question. I was a sophomore in high school when it came out. I think a sophomore, junior. Thought it was absurd then, but all of these things to replace God. My goodness, it's sort of like an uncle that I had. I won't get into his name or anything else, but my father always was giving him a job after he was fired from his last job somewhere else. My father always gave him a job because he was married, he had 5 children, and that was it. But my father always said, if he just used the energy that he had as a con artist, doing honest work and honest things, he could be dictator of the world in 5 months. He had such a great personality. This is the way I look at a lot of these men and women who are going to change perfection. They're going to get a good sense of that. Listen to it carefully. They're going to change God. Wow.
Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. And these are the people with the podium right now, the power. And I'm referring to 2 people, really, not to Elon Musk, but to the other man that he spoke with. And that was one of the old heads of Google. And this is what Elon Musk said to Tucker Carlson on April 18th. Now, we are now on June 20th, so this is 2 months ago. Mm-hmm. He said that Larry Page, who was the co-founder of Google, once told him that he hoped to build an artificial intelligence computer that Musk termed a, quote, digital God. According to Musk, the exchange occurred when he stayed with Page at his home in Palo Alto, California, when the 2 were close friends. Musk said, quote, I would talk to him late into the night. Page wanted a, quote, digital super intelligence, Musk said, basically a digital God, if you will, as soon as possible. Musk noted a number of public statements by Page over the years showing that, quote, the whole goal of Google is what's called AGI, artificial general intelligence, or artificial superintelligence. So a new technological God. This is what Page told Musk that he was pushing to create. Now, do you know, the thing that strikes me about this is one word is totally left out. They speak of intelligence. They speak of knowledge. They speak of grinding through billions of pieces of data, but they never speak about holiness or the holy. They're creating a God of absolute power and intelligence that has nothing to do with what is holy. How do you react to that?
Well, they dare not. They dare not talk about holiness because the God that it sounds like, at least from superficially, it sounds like the God that they're trying to create. And just that should give you pause right there. The God they're trying to create. Right? There's something wrong with trying to create God. Okay?
Yeah.
There's just something it's backwards. It's backwards and it's inside out. However, the God that they're trying to create is not holy. He's not holy. That's you're absolutely right with that observation. Holiness has nothing to do with it. Nothing. Wow, what a separation they've made really what a separation they're making, and they've made already, and they're making. They continue to make.
Yeah. Well, they want to bow down to super power, to super information, but not to wisdom. They don't want. They really almost say they will adore, they will worship power, to the sort of infinite the power of intelligence, of computers running through the entire Encyclopedia Britannica in about half a second. And already they're making these machines and programs which, if I type in, give me the news or the main trends in the Vatican for the last 30 years, I actually tried this, and it came out with, in 1/2 a second, it came out with an article talking about the 1990s, the 2000s, the election of Pope Benedict, the election of Pope Francis. But it was as if I were reading pre-digested pizza that someone had eaten and handed over to me and said, now you chew on this.
Good analogy.
There's no soul in it. There's no thought in it. It's like a stream of superficiality. I can't express how disappointed I was in the lack of real wisdom of this machine.
Well, you just used the magic word, and I was going to bring this up too. They are talking about intelligence, the maximum intelligence, the ne plus ultra intelligence of the world, of the universe, of everything they're trying to create. But I haven't heard the word wisdom used. Well, if you read sacred scripture and you listen to the church, the church that Christ founded, both are talking about the wisdom of God. I may be wrong. Maybe I'm not coming to it right away, but I don't remember in scripture hearing about the intelligence of God.
Well, they do refer
if it's there, it escapes me right now, but it's the wisdom of God. Wisdom is intelligence and also lived experience, personal experience into intelligence. That's wisdom. That's what we want to hear, and that's what we want ultimately to help save us. Not just intelligence. Robert, I don't know. You've lived long enough to have met quite a number of people. So have I. And boy, I'm writing novels. And you know what a great net life is to have fished out so many different personalities and then be able to use them in stories, right? But I've met incredibly intelligent people. Robert, I've met incredibly intelligent people who have committed suicide. And I've talked to some of them, trying to talk them out of that. So is that intelligence? This is where this leads when it is independent of the real God, when it's independent of sanctity, when it's independent of wisdom. It goes nowhere. Look at the history of the world. I understand that we're talking about the future, but look for a moment at the past. The people who were gods, actually, there were many times in history where people made themselves gods. Yes, Brave New World in real time. Yes, that's it. I'm just reading the monitor there. But the people who made themselves into gods all came to inglorious ends. They died.
Yes.
If nothing else, they died. But I'm just talking about the number of greatly intelligent people that I knew who committed suicide.
I'm sorry.
Because they didn't have wisdom. They had intelligence. They got PhDs, but they ended their own lives because they couldn't cope with it. There's something wrong there. And when I mentioned it before, but the Tower of Babel, right? Just keep building, we'll get to heaven. Yeah. Well, no, it's not going to happen that way, right?
Yeah, so I appreciate those remarks, and it's a terrible thing. It's very sad to think of someone taking their own life, that kind of sense of loss and loneliness. And so I'm very sad to hear that. But what you've stressed is that the smartest and most powerful and richest people of our time are taking humanity toward a goal which is opposed to the one that all of our most wise and charitable and good people have told us is the wrong goal.
That's right.
And I'm including Mother Teresa of Calcutta, etc. They say if we go toward God, the true God, and it's the first commandment, thou shalt have no other gods. If we try to make another God who doesn't have the personhood, which is testified to in the Trinitarian nature of God, testified to in the relationship of Father to Son, and testified to in the love that Jesus Christ displayed for the weakest and the most wounded, which then prompted, led in our church over 2,000 years to many saints committing their entire lives to helping the poor and the weak. The world is now in the steering wheel of the world seems to be in the hands of people who are not wise, but foolish.
You know, you just mentioned Mother Teresa. I just wrote an article this morning, talking about the time I met Mother Teresa and sat with her alone for 1 hour. It was fantastic. I said, blessedly uninterrupted for 1 hour with this woman. Magnificent time. Time magazine asked her, and this is pertinent to what we're talking about. Listen to the question by the reporter. The question was, Mother Teresa, to what do you owe your success? Right? Now, you know Mother Teresa. You met her. She had a fantastic wrinkly smile. That's the way I would describe it. And she simply said, success. God didn't call me to be successful. He called me to be faithful. If you wish, that's where my success lies. That's where everyone's success lies, in being faithful to God. Of course, the reporter didn't get it at all. You know, she was too busy being spiritual and not religious or something. But here we come down to it. Their values, the people who are promoting such a thing as the creation of a new God, because when we get down to it, that's what they're promoting. They should get to know the old God first. And none of them have bothered to know the old God. Pardon my expression, the old God. They don't know that. They don't know him. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, and it's going to have a bad ending. It has to. Always has. Always has.
Well, I can come back to this too. I have other couple remarks to make, but first I'll go to the second point. Israeli futurologist Yuval Noah Harari. Now, this man.
Tell me a little bit about. I know the name. Tell me about him.
Well, he's a scholar from Israel, but he's gotten attached to the World Economic Forum of Klaus Schwab, which is proposing a great reset, so-called, for humanity, saying they're going to find a way for us to get in harmony with nature, to have a fair economy, to have a society which isn't so divided into rich and poor. And they're proposing this as something they're going to have by 2030, 7 years from now.
Oh, boy. Something to look forward to.
And so Harari has, every year they have their big meeting. He always gives a major speech. Sometimes it's the keynote speech. And he's the author of a famous book called Homo Deus, which means man, God. And his idea is that we are the creatures now on the planet with the mind that can produce computers. He's interested in computers as well, just as Musk was telling us about Larry Page, the founder of Google. So what these computers will do is make algorithms which show that human life is best lived if you get up at 7:07 in the morning, you brush your teeth, then maybe you have a little yogurt, then you walk for about 10 minutes, then you go sit at your desk and you start your work, and the monitoring of your blood and of your energy will be continual, and your whole life will be optimized. according to this vision. And he's saying that in an interview on May 19th, which is 1 month and 1 day ago, he was in Lisbon, Portugal. And the reason, again, that I focus on him is because he's somehow the architect or the author of some of the thought behind the Great Reset of this World Economic Forum. And over the years, these people have brought in young leaders, including Justin Trudeau of Canada, including Angela Merkel, who became Chancellor of Germany, including some of the people in England and in France. I think Macron, who became the president of France. They all were young fellows at the World Economic Forum years ago, and so this is a group of thoughtful European leaders or global leaders who are planning the future. And the man with the ideology for it is this Yuval Noah Harari. And he gave an interview on May 19th in Lisbon, Portugal, where he said this: artificial intelligence can create new ideas. It can even write a new Bible. He went on to say that the Bible we have, written by different prophets and different people like Moses and Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, is imperfect because it's not written by a supercomputer. And if we produce a supercomputer written Bible, all humanity can gather around it. I don't know if you want to react to that.
Sure. So in other words, listen to this. Listen to this. What he's saying, in other words, is that perfection excludes all human participation in the answer. Well, right? And yet he expects humans to live according to that perfection. It's devoid of all humanity. He wants an answer that's created artificially. And I always loved that word artificial. I always did. Since I heard about birth control, and we had a great priest when I was growing up. He said, no, not birth control, artificial birth control. He kept using the word, let's call it what it is. It's artificial. And Fulton J. Sheen, he said, when you talk about birth control, he said, there's hardly any birth and absolutely no control, right? But this word artificial, as in artificial birth control, artificial is going to take care of the problem. Well, artificial didn't really take care of a problem with birth control, did it? That was the first great artificial that we had. Look where that's led. It promised. What did it promise, Robert? I know I'm getting a little bit off track, but artificial birth control promised happiness. Everyone was now going to have the right size family, only the number of children that you wanted and could absolutely love. And they were all going to be educated perfectly, this, that, and the other thing. It was going to be the absolute solution to everything. Do you know the percentages of sexually transmitted, I'm fine. Transmitted diseases we have. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. Yeah. You got everything is coming from this artificial great solution. And during the 1960s, you remember, well, maybe you don't remember. You're a young man. I keep forgetting that I'm an old man. But I remember during the 1960s, this was the promise of salvation. This was what you're talking about right now. The artificial intelligence that's coming in the future. This was going to be it. Whatever it was, that was it. This was the answer. Well, it wasn't the answer. It's caused more problems and imbalance in the world than anything else. So when I hear artificial anything, and especially when they talk, artificial is going to replace God. Artificial is going to replace God. Artificial is going to replace man. Excuse me, why not just let the computers multiply by themselves and build their own world? This is just crazy. And it's all for naught, because it's not going to lead to a solution for anything.
Right.
In future generations in 100 years, dig up this video that we're doing today? Remember, I told you so.
Well, I mean, I would say that intentionally I wanted to bring these questions into our discussion because I think it's important, and I think a lot of money and a lot of influence is being brought to bear on. Oh, okay, we've got a thing that's appeared on our screen. Michael Stephen. In 1995, Cardinal Luigi Ciappi wrote, quote, in the third secret, which means the third secret of Fatima from the apparitions in 1917, in the third secret it is foretold, among other things, that the great apostasy in the church begins at the top. Any comment on that? Well, Father Murr, that would be interrupting our present discussion, but I do think the danger is always, throughout history, a departure from faith. And there's always a danger that people who are sort of professionals in something, professionals in the faith, can be the ones the devil attacks the most harshly and deceptively and tries to bring them down. So maybe we should come back to this question at the end of our discussion of artificial intelligence to bring it once again to the leadership of our church. It's a valid thing to ask, and it both brings.
You're making me think, Robert. Maybe the leadership of our church could use some artificial intelligence.
Well, what I wanted to really bring the question to is human nature, and then the nature of the divine. And I wanted to reflect on this because I think this is the deepest thing we can do. I think we say, and any young person would say, I don't want to worship any God who's not worthy of my worship. I'm not going to worship a rock star or a baseball player or any, figure proposed to me for my ultimate reverence, only if I feel that such a being is worthy of that reverence, would my heart, my mind, my will be turned in that direction. And a lot of people who are atheists or agnostics say, I've never come across any being, any idea that's worthy of that type of total commitment. What the Christians say is that they've been enraptured by the presence and the truth of Jesus Christ to recognize that this carpenter from Nazareth, who went around doing good and preaching and healing people, and then was arrested and scourged and put a crown of thorns on his head and condemned to death and then died, that he then rose from the dead by a mysterious, completely unexplained process of reversing entropy, where death was trampled by death. And for the first time in history, someone rose from the dead, and that he created a church that has carried the message of his reality down through the ages, that he's worthy because he wasn't demanding our worship, but he simply was the sacrificial victim whose love went to the end. So since this is the essence of Christianity, and such a thing is not included in this artificial intelligence God or in this new Bible, it seemed to me we ought to discuss this once again.
It's the same thing. We get back to artificial. Here, years ago, I don't know where to begin with this. It's there's so many ways to get into this. So many avenues open. I would say this though to that. When did President Nixon say, "Let me say this about that," right?
Okay, I respect.
Let's get to this word. Let's get to this word. Love. Love, not LUV. Okay, love. Where does artificial intelligence? How does artificial intelligence deal with love? It can't. We've already gone through again, I go back to the 50s and 60s. I was alive. I remember when computers were going to pair up people in ideal marriages. That went real well. Everything is devoid of the spiritual. What they're saying in all of this is that man has no real spiritual component to him.
Yeah,
right?
No soul.
No soul. No soul. In a word, no soul. Well, I'm sorry, but man certainly has a soul. Certainly has a soul. That makes him capable of loving. And this is where they're getting everything wrong. They are absolutely ignoring the spiritual side of man and the soul of man. They're ignoring the real God, the soul of man. They are ignoring love. They're ignoring love. I'd love to see that computer come up with a printout of love. I'd love to see that one. I would love to see it.
Well, what you just said is what I wanted you to say. And
well, thank you.
Because I want to leave a mark in the historical record that somebody said the emperor has no clothes. And essentially everyone is saying, oh, we got the neon god, the computer, it's triple the speed of last year. Now it's quantum. Now it's global. And now, it's a supercomputer. And we got 100 supercomputers and now 1,000. And they can chew up everything about our environment, our weather, our genetic code. They know everything. We'll yield ourselves to this knowledge. And you're saying, what you and I are saying today is they're leaving out the most important thing that has been known for thousands of years.
And actually not only the most important thing, the only thing that counts.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's a dead end.
It is a dead end.
But they're putting trillions towards it.
Well, let them. Schwab would become a poorer man because of it. Go right ahead. I think that's a good start.
There you go.
There you go.
Okay, so we're in a sense the resistance of human persons against the Borg, we might call it. The created sort of artificial intelligence that will grind up everything with super speed and tell us the temperature of everything and how many heartbeats we have and how many times our cells are dividing, but it won't tell us the meaning of our lives. It won't give us a God to love or to be loved. It won't give us anything to adore and any final definitive end. It's got no meaning. It's just a series of digits.
It's parallel to Oscar Wilde's definition of a cynic. Do you remember that? Fulton Sheen used to use it a lot in his talks. Oscar Wilde defined a cynic as a man who knew the price of everything and the value of nothing.
There you go. Absolutely.
So these people know all of the things that are unimportant, and they're going to put them together in something that's just going to be fantastic, but it's not going to even touch the important.
Right.
Congratulations. Good.
Now, the word that I came up with that I'm meditating on in these days is the word holy. And I chose a couple of passages from Scripture because I think nobody knows the meaning of this word except people who are seeking, sort of been touched by the desire for God. And that is the greatest and deepest desire. And yet it's being expelled from the discourse in our society, among the intellectuals in the universities. It's part of metaphysics because the holy is what transcends, in a sense, all temporal things. And it is got a moral dimension, but we are almost canceling anything that has a moral dimension. So I'm sorry about that. The scriptures speak of this over and over. So the present scriptures, which are regarded by these men as fallible, speak repeatedly about the holy. And I'll have a couple of examples and let you reflect on it. Jesus said to his disciples when they asked him how to pray, he said, pray this way, our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy name is holy. May your name be made holy or kept holy. And he used that word, hallow. Hallow, it means holy. Matthew chapter 6, 7-9, it's the prayer that Jesus taught. Prophet Isaiah wrote, "For thus says the one who is high and lifted up, who inhabits eternity, whose name is holy." Quote, "I dwell in the high and holy place, and also with him who is of a contrite and lowly spirit." Isaiah 57:15. And then the prophet Samuel wrote, quote, "There is none holy like the Lord, for there is none besides you." 1 Samuel 2:2. And then St. Peter wrote in his first letter, "Therefore set your hope fully on that grace that will be brought to you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As obedient children, do not be conformed to the passions of your former ignorance, but as he who called you is holy, you also be holy in all your conduct, since it is written, 'You shall be holy, for I am holy.'" Close quote. 1 Peter 1:13-16. And then the last one, King David in the Psalms wrote, "I will also praise you with the harp for your faithfulness, O my God. I will sing praises to you with the lyre, O Holy One of Israel." So what does this mean to you, Father Murr, that we call God holy? And will artificial intelligence somehow be the equivalent of the holiness of God? What is your thought on this?
Well, they'll try to make it that way. Yes. They're talking about it as God. So I mean, they're using different words to mean different things. They'll try to make it that way. Holiness means this. Holy means to be set apart. In other words, not the world, and not the spirituality, not the, if you will, the spirituality of the world. That's a spirituality, all right. Not the spirit of the world, not the mundane. It's set apart. It's over here. This is why we seek. Well, I do, and I think you do. We seek out a place for prayer that's holy. We go to a chapel, we go to a forest, we go to a shrine, we go some place that's special, some place that at least for us doesn't belong to the world, some place that's set apart. We talk about people as being holy when they are set apart from the normal people, average people or average person in the world. They're different. They're set apart. We used to refer to priests as being holy. We used to refer to religious nuns, priests, brothers and sisters as being holy. The church as being holy. The church as being holy. The church still is holy. And so are the priests and the nuns that I know. But they, in the sense that they are set apart, they don't belong to the world. You know, one of the reasons, this may sound strange to people who listen to this, but one of the reasons that religious habits were created to begin with and were worn. Listen to this. And I learned this from a couple religious sisters, actually. My goodness, one was in religious life, 75 years old, an absolute saint. They were also created not just for the unity of the group, but to make you feel, listen to this, uncomfortable in the world. To remind you that you don't belong in the world or to the world. Right? It's that feeling of being uncomfortable is the idea of being set apart.
Yeah.
I'm just like this. I remember these sisters were talking to me. People would stare at them in a restaurant because we don't belong in restaurants. They would stare at us on the street because we don't belong in the streets, right? What have you? And we were only comfortable when we came back to our convent, and very comfortable when we entered the chapel. Right? That's where the comfort belongs. That's in being set apart. That's what it means. Well, anyway, we've got a real balancing act, Robert, because we're supposed to be set apart and at the same time function in the world,
that's
right? It's this back and forth. But those moments, that's why the moments of prayer are so important, and the place for prayer is important. I often tell that to friends, priests and religious who call me they want my advice on something. I don't know why they would want my advice, but they do. And I insist that they find a place what par excellence, the place that I choose always is where the Blessed Sacrament is, because I know I'm in the presence of God. There's no question of it. But that the idea of holiness is the idea of being set apart. That's it.
I would say it's the nature of God to be holy.
Certainly.
So it's the nature of a human person to be made of chemicals like carbon, and we have red blood cells which have iron in them. But our essence, our spiritual essence, which rises or seeks or turns toward the eternal God, is no longer chemical. It's based, it lives in these bodies. I've said before, these bodies of clay. We have this treasure in earthen vessels, in vessels of clay. The modern scientific period, which goes back about 500 years now, and in a sense went right back all the way to the Greeks in Athens. Hello from Phoenix, Arizona, someone says. Thank you for joining us. The entire process of physical science is an effort to find what is real, to find where the atom is or the energy is that is ultimately real. And what it keeps discovering is that it's just eluding our mental conceptions, but also our physical conceptions. Everything that we touch, we know slowly passes away, even if it takes 1,000 years or 1,000,000 years. It's not, nothing we have is stable forever, but we have the longing to be in the presence of God, who is unchanging, stable forever, holy forever. And this is the deepest longing of our mind and our soul. The earthly or temporal vision of the scientist is in some way desirous of canceling this longing for the eternal or longing for the holy. And this is the war between sort of worldliness and sort of spiritual orientation. And we're right in the middle of this now as the worldly power of the electrons in the computers and in the chips, the silicon chips and the electric connections with the global network, almost in a form that Teilhard de Chardin spoke of the noosphere developing as if a kind of separate entity above the individual personalities of men and women, that there's a kind of scientific connected intelligence that's growing beyond what individual humans understand. This seems to be...
Robert, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You have a PhD from Harvard, all right?
Actually from Yale, but I was an undergraduate.
Excuse me. Of all the places to mix it up with. From Yale.
I was an undergraduate at Harvard and a graduate student with Yaroslav Pelikan at Yale in the history of the development of Christian doctrine. He was
superb. Now, here's my question to you, because I've experienced this really, truly. And I remember coming to this insight.
Okay, I'm ready.
When you're studying, when you begin in kindergarten, and then you get to first grade and fifth grade, and you graduate from grade school, and you go to high school, then you go to university, and then you get your PhD, you're at the pinnacle of knowledge. You've honed knowledge to such a point that you are the absolute expert. Now, here's the difference that I've seen in men and women in as far as attitude and as far as wisdom is concerned. Those who are wise, those who are not wise but very intelligent, get here. And they are Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so and Dr. So-and-so and Dr. Jill and Dr. Flutzy Dooley and Dr. Right? Because they know everything. But the wise man and the wise woman, when they get to this point, what really happens? What really happens? This happens.
Yes.
You understand how little you understand.
Yeah.
You understand how little you're the great expert, and you really, truly, in all humility and in all truth, come to the conclusion of how little I understand of this.
Yes.
It's vast. Look at what the scientists are doing right now with the universe. It's mind-boggling. They're talking the number of galaxies within the galaxy within the galaxy. Every time they look, it gets wider.
Right.
It doesn't fit into the cone, and you're at the pinnacle, and that's it. You've come to, now I know everything. No, it opens wider. This is where God lives. This is where God lives. So if you think anyone is ever going to get to the knowledge of God and understand what God has done and what he continues to do, congratulations. It's beyond anything that anyone could comprehend. And that is the difference between intelligence and wisdom. The wisdom is to really, I mean that. There we are. I think I do mean that. Yes, I do.
No, you've said a very profound and true thing. And it's a sad thing. Everyone knows it, that our intellectual elites have been tricked by their own sort of intellectual pride to believe that they really are on a new level of understanding. They have learned something, and yet what there is...
Robert, aren't they truly on a new level of understanding? They can't look, so many of them today in the United States of America, which we suppose is the most advanced world country in the world, they can't look at reality and see reality.
Okay.
I mean, are you kidding me? They're going to become God. Congratulations. This is so absurd. And the absurdity is that they don't see it. This is the joke of the century. This is unbelievable.
Okay, maybe we'll call this program the joke of the century. Because you finally hit on where I wanted you to reach, which is to say these very smart people and very wealthy people, very powerful people, are fools. And they seem to think that they're going to use their foolishness, their folly, to impose a kind of chain or a cage on the human mind and the human soul. True. Above all. And maybe they will, but some people like ourselves will be in opposition because we really care about true human freedom. And there's one man I wanted to bring into this discussion because I went to a press conference here in Rome yesterday on something that Pope Francis just wrote on Blaise Pascal. Blaise Pascal, one of the greatest mathematicians of all time.
Absolutely.
And he was born 400 years ago yesterday, on June 19th in 1623. And he only lived to be 39. So he died in 1662. But there was a moment in his life when he had a mystical experience. Mm-hmm. And he felt the holiness of God. He referred to it as fire. He called it Night of Fire. And I don't think any computer can be programmed to experience this or to understand this. But throughout our scriptures and our history, we say the fire of God, which burned the bush on Mount Sinai but did not consume it, or which descended, the Holy Spirit descended on the apostles in tongues of flame. but it did not harm them. Or Blaise Pascal, when he was 31 years old, for about 4 hours one night, felt in the presence of God. And he wrote about this, what he had experienced. He said it was the greatest joy of his life.
Right.
And he wrote this down on a little sheet of paper, and he put it inside his jacket.
Yes, you remember that? Yes.
He kind of sewed it in, and it wasn't discovered until he died. And that piece of paper has survived. We had it, and he talks about Night of Fire. I just wrote about this yesterday, and what he says is that all of man's seeking finally is resolved with the encounter with God. And
Yes.
this is what it's not the encounter with the PhD or the encounter with Goldman Sachs or with President Biden or with any worldly leader. You can't receive even the Peace Prize or anything. The only thing you can receive is the presence of God. This is the only thing. Man does not live by bread alone, but by the presence of God, by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. They're trying to eliminate this. They're trying to make a kind of tabula rasa. And the night of fire that Blaise Pascal experienced would be not included in their equation.
Oh, it would elude them completely. As a matter of fact, anyone who does not know God or does not believe in God, who has not have some experience of the presence of God, is listening to you right now as a fool talking, listening to me as fools talking, because they just don't get it. And by God, they're not going to get it. They don't want to get it. They've made a decision. Let me just go back on something that you said, because I think it's very important to clarify just a little point. And that is, you said, these are the greatest and most and wealthiest men in the world putting their money behind all of this. I just remind you that one of my favorite books that I read in high school actually was The Godfather. And The Godfather begins with a quote. I believe it's from Cicero. I might be wrong, but it's on the first page, and it says, behind every great fortune lies a crime.
A great crime.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about these people as being so intelligent, they made all of this capital by their intelligence, and they knew what. Start investigating. As they say, follow the money, and you'll see, but that most of it began not the way you're thinking. Anyway, I think but Blaise Pascal is fantastic. I had to read, and then after about 2 hours of having to read, I read with delight just about everything that he wrote. Fantastic man. His experience of God as that fire is exactly the reason that fire is used always. Flames of fire over the apostles at Pentecost. The fiery bush that never consumed the bush of the fire on. Fire has two properties: heat and light. And heat, the passion, and light, the understanding. And therefore, God is so often represented as fire. Therefore, as I said in the last broadcast, I think it was, my great patron saint, St. Charles Borromeo, insisted that next to every tabernacle in the world, in the Catholic world, there be a sanctuary lamp with fire, with the fire glowing, to show the passion, and it be red, the color red, to show the passion and the light, right?
So Father, what we are doing in our conversations really is carving out a little space between you and me and those who listen to us for the possibility of this encounter, the encounter Blaise Pascal experienced, the encounter of man with God. And what may be mocked, this may be mocked, and it could even be canceled at some point. And under certain communist regimes, it was canceled, as in the Soviet Union. because people said this is a kind of opium. It leads people astray from the hard facts of life. And it seems like now we could face the danger that the tremendous power of the computer, millions and millions of calculations every second, every half a second, could give a kind of veneer of authority. They're saying that it should have more authority than the Bible because it will be.
Of course.
So we're issuing a kind of warning. And what we're warning is that the greatest thing that human beings have can be taken away from us.
That's right.
The door will be locked for our access to God. It'll be told it's.
And Robert, not only can they be taken away from us, they will be.
Well,
they will be.
It's a tragedy. I wanted to just add some facts here so people will know about this Blaise Pascal experience, this great French mathematician. First of all, that when he was 19 years old, he developed a type of arithmetic machine, which some say, Pope Francis just wrote this yesterday in a letter on the 400th anniversary of his birth. He wrote, the ancestor of our modern computers.
Yes.
In other words, Blaise Pascal in some way can be regarded as the original creator of the computer. But what he also represents is the other extreme of the search for God. And I wanted to give these facts. He had a mystical experience at the age of 31, which is known as Pascal's Night of Fire. His vision of God occurred on November 23rd, 1654. It lasted 2 hours, beginning at 10:30 p.m. and ending at 12:30 a.m. We know this because when Pascal died, it was discovered he had sewn into his jacket an account of that vision. And here are some of the words that he wrote. This is the beginning. The year of grace, 1654. Monday, 23 November, Feast of St. Clement. From 10:30 until midnight, fire. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, not of the philosophers and of the learned. Certitude, feeling, joy, peace, God of Jesus Christ, my God and your God. Forgetfulness of the world and of everything except God. He is only found by the ways taught in the gospel. Grandeur of the human soul. Righteous Father, the world has not known you, but I have known you. Joy, 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 tears of joy. Those are just about half of what he said. I thought I should put that onto the record, let people hear the words of a man who had a mystical experience and was the greatest, perhaps, mathematician of our culture. And I thought that would be interesting for people.
Certainly one of the most intelligent men that humanity has produced. Certainly. Yep.
Yeah. So, Father, I'd like you to sum up where we stand and where we're going to go. We're going to have to come back to this question of whether we've lost the faith in the highest levels of our church. What is the temptation? What is the danger? And how can it be recovered?
You want to do that now? How much time do we have?
Let's take 1 or 2, 3 more minutes. You sum it up and say we're going to continue it.
You let me answer the question. Give me the question again. Go ahead.
What is the danger that the leadership of our church, as seems to be the prophecy of Fatima, will lose the faith? What is the danger of that happening, and how can it be overcome? What would it mean, and how can it be overcome?
Well, I mean, we certainly need more than 15 minutes for this, but I'm going to go ahead and say this to begin it. We can get into this maybe at the beginning of the next talk we have, the next time we meet. Have people at the top of the church lost the faith? Indubitably, many have. I have no question of that. There's no question of that for me. Many have lost the faith. I've dealt with some of them. I've dealt with real saints too, Robert, and so have you. who are men who are at the core of the church. But most of them right now, to tell everyone the truth, are incredibly frustrated, bothered, not in a good place, because they see what's happening. So these are not great times to be at the top. Many have lost the faith. The Virgin of La Salette, Rome will lose the faith. Rome will lose the faith, is what she said. Right? That's for us Catholics. For us Catholics, that's the top. Rome will lose the faith. Much of this is happening, and it's happening in a way I think that even a blind person could see. I think it's obvious to people, and it is basically when the church decided that the church was going to be part of the world. It was going to consume the philosophy of the world. It was going to be part of the world. It was going to be part of what's happening to human beings in the marketplace, this, that, and the other thing, which is fine. We're supposed to be in the marketplace. We're supposed to be part of the world, and we always have been. But we've given up what is, let's go right back to what you were talking about before. We have given up holiness. We have given up being set apart. We're not set apart. Most of us belong to the world. And many of our church leaders belong to the world, and that is the philosophy they want to follow. This is the problem. That is what they've chosen to follow. Not holiness, not really worried about how you get people to heaven. This has become secondary, if that, because they're worried about the whole man. They keep talking about the whole man. Well, they forget that part of man, that his ultimate goal is to get to heaven, is salvation. That's not as important as environmental concerns, as what you're eating, all of this nonsense. Well, I call it nonsense. People understand what I'm saying, I hope, but it's not all nonsense. I understand that, but it's not something to replace salvation, for goodness sake. And that's what we've been doing, and that's what many of our leaders are doing. And they feel very happy when they're applauded by the world. I have never seen anything happen as I have seen within the last decade in the Vatican, inviting the most incredible people to come in and be expert speakers and give expert opinions. Many of them are atheists. I mean, every once in a while, throw in an atheist for good measure, sure, and shake it up, right? I get it. You should have also the opinions of those who don't believe, so we understand what's happening in the world. But you don't call them to be expert witnesses and get into their own philosophy. And excuse me for saying so, but I will say so. And abandoning Christian teaching, Christian morals, in favor of the world. No, there's something wrong. This is not what Christ came and gave his life for, so that we could be part of the world and swallow whole the philosophy of the world. That's not it. There's something very wrong. Now, am I despairing? Do you see me despairing? I'm not despairing. No, I'm not. Because ultimately, I'm responsible for the salvation of my own soul with the grace of God. That my responsibility is to respond to the grace of God and get to heaven. I'm trying to take as many people with me as I can, right? You're doing the same thing. I don't know if you're going to take me with you or I'm going to take you with me. It doesn't matter. The idea is we understand what this is all about and why it's important. But we also have to understand that we are a minority in the world. We are a great minority. And sad to say, we are a minority in the Catholic Church today. This is what's wrong. I'm sorry to say that, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't darken my whole vision of everything. I just know where I am. I know what's happening around me. In psychology, I remember the first time I heard the term, it was at NYU with Dr. Samstag. And he said, every once in a while we have to stop and do a reality check. I said, a reality check? I'd never heard the term. He said, well, you just stop and where are you? Where are you? How do you feel? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing right now? What is it? Well, I'm saying this is a reality check. We have to take reality checks every once in a while in the church and see where we are. We're not in a great place. That doesn't mean that you're not in a great place and that I'm not, but the church at large is not where it's supposed to be. Now, you just heard from the gospel according to Charlie. Okay. So take it with a grain of salt. But that's the way I feel about it. You asked, Robert. You got the answer.
Well, powerful words, Father Murr. You've told us not to be conformed to the world. You've told us to work out our salvation with fear and trembling and joy. And I think you've told us the right things. We'll come back next week to continue this conversation as we confront the temptations proposed by very powerful modern forces outside the church and inside the church. And we will continue to go forward with Father Charles Murr. This is Robert Moynihan speaking to you from Rome. All the best.
God bless, Robert.